Hey Ratbags, it's Jade today going over what kind of creatures we could potentially have as mounts in Grounded. We know definitely confirmed we're getting obviously these guys, the Red Ant Soldier and of course the Orb Weaver. And I've done a video taking a look at these and the strengths and weaknesses of them. How their abilities are really going to make Grounded mounts maybe stand out from other games like Ark or Small Land. And I only wish that I could just literally jump on one of these and start riding it around. But mounts, there's going to be more. The devs have said they're going to be adding a lot more. They wanted to just start off with 2 to see how the community felt about them, see what the balance was like. Of course, it's got everyone's minds racing about what would actually make a good mount and what wouldn't. So I'm only really going to speculate on the creatures that are currently in Grounded right now, or maybe the Grounded 2 new creatures that we've seen. And you guys, make sure you let me know in the comment section, out of today's video, which bug are you most excited for about potentially being a mount. So just a quick recap though, soldier ants, these guys we seemingly are going to be grabbing their eggs from a usual anthill, bringing them back and putting them inside our ant stable. After a while they'll hatch into a friendly ant and then we can simply go ahead and ride them. We don't know whether or not we're going to have to craft saddles just yet, or whether or not they'll come equipped. They can get knocked out, and if they get knocked out too many times they'll be sent back to their stable and you'll have to wait a few hours for them to be used again. If you're playing on harder difficulties like WoW mode, your creatures, if they lose all the health, they will die. We're going to be able to tell our buggies to stay still, and we can send them back to the stables at any time. They'll have their own inventory as well. So yeah, we're going to be using these guys already as utility. Carrying lots of materials, hoovering up some of the thistle needles and stuff, or just lots of grass planks. It's going to have a speed boost of course, and it'll help us actually get through certain things like roots. It also has the ability to summon 2 regular ants. Although to be fair, maybe summon isn't the correct word. It looks more like that they can just be basically told to come and fight alongside us when we find them. So you'll have a whole little gang with you. Now the Orb Weaver is meant to be more combat. It can fire a protective web in front of it. And I did assume, I maybe assumed too much, that we would be able to fire our own webs and create bridges to walk on. But a lot of you guys pointed out in the last video, it hasn't actually seen that happen. It just shows the Orb Weaver actually walking across the webs. I don't know, I felt like the footage of them webs did look pretty placed, rather than just like twisted or at an angle. So I'm really hoping that is the case, and we can use these guys to make bridges, even if it's only short distances. They've got a big screen to maybe nullify enemies for a few seconds to get some more hits in. They're going to be fast, and both creatures should be able to handle maybe slightly higher inclines than we can. So yeah, apologies, I've gone over this in a separate video, but I figure I should give you the breakdown again so we can start comparing some of the other bugs. But yeah, this guy's going to have an attack. I do believe both of them can jump, although we have only seen the red soldier ant actually do that. And we'll be absolutely sticking enemies with our web with these guys. Green shield bug and stink bugs. They're simply just not maybe that great looking. I can't really see these guys as potential for mounts. With their big ability being to obviously use a toxic gas, they're also really slow. Like what kind of use are they going to be if they can't get around quickly, and their attacks can also do damage to you. So, won't waste your time. I think this won't make an appearance as a mount. Now we haven't actually seen any Black Ox Beetles in any of the footage, and none of the armors look like they are containing parts. We know so many of the bugs are going to be returning, but not all of them. Devs have stated that some might not make it back, or they're going to have a bit more work put into them. In fact, every bug has had a little bit more of a fresh look, whether that's abilities, designs, or maybe just health. In terms of damage output, Black Ox Beetle would be amazing to ride into battle and start ramming bugs. That's its best feature of course, but again they're relatively slow when they're not charging at you. Although they can throw rocks, it'd be interesting to see this as maybe a more defensive creature that you would keep at your base. But I don't know, I feel like it's pretty cumbersome, and in terms of big creatures, I wouldn't want to necessarily have one of these to get anywhere. And since we've already got turrets and other things, I just can't see this being utilised as a creature. Now, fan favourite is absolutely the Roly Poly. A bit like the Black Ox Beetle though, it's relatively slow when it's not actually doing its roll attack, but it makes more sense that this guy would be able to roll further and longer. Black Ox Beetle feels like it would run out of stamina quite a bit if he was doing the charge attack, and it would obviously be something you have to think about because all the buggies are going to have stamina. But how cool would it be if its pretty much main point of travel was to go longer and further as a roll one? There's a bunch of media out there that show you could try getting like a wheel on either side of the roly-polies and then basically put the saddle on top. Yes, it might not make much actual sense, but I love the idea of this for sure. Rolling around on it, maybe use magnets or magnetism to keep a saddle on. It'd be so cool to be rolling around in a ball. And size wise, well, they're pretty good. I feel like, you know, if we can get on them two creatures, then this one's going to be fine. Would it be useful as maybe a 2-player mount? I think it'd be probably too complicated already with its roll features if they did add it. One bit of good news is that previous interviews, the devs have said it would be really cool to see a roly-poly as a mount. I think they know it would be a fan favourite if they could get it in somehow. So this one, I'm going to keep. In fact, let's keep a keep pile. Maybe I was too harsh deleting the other creatures. Good old ladybugs and ladybirds. There is something almost nostalgic about standing on one of these the first time you came across it and maybe realised it wasn't going to hurt you. The amount of times I've literally stood on one just to see how far it would go with me on it and basically follow its trail. Let's talk about the fact that there is more of a prominent split in the ladybugs and ladybirds in the actual new trailers, although we have only actually seen ladybugs and not ladybirds. But looking at them now, I can see quite a definitive split there already anyway. Obviously this is meant to be their shells. It would be cool if they could glide, but of course if they can glide, how would we ever actually use them? We wouldn't be able to have a saddle on top, and the head part is just a little bit too small to actually sit on. So a couple things to think about there. If they were going to start adding ladybugs that actually fly or maybe glide, then we probably wouldn't be able to use them as mounts. If they're keeping them as purely just land-based creatures, it could work, but I do feel like even though they're not going to be flying or gliding, the idea that we're just sitting right on top of their wings like this doesn't really give a kind of real feel to it. They're pretty slow as well, even slower than some of the other creatures I mentioned. What kind of use could they be? If they can find some way to add a saddle that doesn't interfere with the idea that their wings would actually flap about. But yeah, I can't see it happening. Now, it does feel a little bit like I might be just crapping on a lot of these bugs as mounts. I don't really want to, for sure. Like, I want there to be lots of choices. But some bugs do just feel like, yeah, it'd be hard to really utilise them. Bombardier Beetle, let's face it, it shoots acid out of its bum. How are we going to really get that happening if we're actually sitting mounted on it? I guess it does have a bit more of an extended kind of neck upper body part here. So in terms of us being able to sit on it with a little saddle maybe, and then the rest of its back could kind of like arch up as it does anyway when it fires on us. But again, what use would it really have? Is it a gatherer? Is it a good transport creature? Is it good purely for just fighting? I just can't see it being an addition. So it does feel like a lot of the mounts that I'm thinking of are going to be ones that don't have wings that literally open up, or at least shouldn't have wings that literally open up. I guess that's my hypothesis for so many of these bugs. Literally all of these in the real world have parts that open up on top of them. But that would limit us to literally things like spiders and things like larvae and just ants. But of course, if we've got an orb weaver, then there should be no real reason why we couldn't eventually get a wall spider. It would basically just be the upgraded version of the orb weaver. The devs have said the orb weaver is going to be kind of a late game creature, but I think that meant in early access. Like, you won't be necessarily getting it on day one. And that looks to me like speculation will be actually carrying the eggs out of a spider nest, literally on our shoulders, which makes things tough for combat, as opposed to the ant eggs, which can be just gathered up and put in your inventory. It may take some decent advanced materials to also build the orb weaver nest, so that's something to contemplate and think. But yeah, I can't deny, if we've got the orb weaver, it pretty much means nearly every spider could potentially be a mount. One creature I really like the idea of having as a mount would be a termite, a bigger one though, of course. Termite soldiers are slightly smaller than the ant soldiers, but I still think it would be cool to have these guys as maybe, yeah, a corrosive style mount, obviously firing its acid. If these guys are going to be able to go through roots, maybe it would only be tier 1 roots that these guys can chomp through. A termite could jump through tier 2 or tier 3. I really want there to be reasons to use our mounts rather than just relying on tools. Maybe some new abilities from these guys. Although of course these guys don't actually fire the acid. I'm not too sure if that was ever just a normal creative choice or whatever. But they do have their cloud attack, right? So it sounds cool to use it for acid based attacks for sure. And maybe for getting through certain resources. But in reality I'm struggling to see why or what it would really do or add to the game as a mount compared to already having the ant soldier. It's a tough one. I'm really thinking about this right now. Could this be a mount? I like the idea for sure. But I'm probably going to say there's probably going to be other creatures or other uses. And I think the community probably wouldn't be as excited for this as a mount. But yeah, a termite king, a large one perhaps. That could be badass. What if this was like an elite tier style bug that we could tame? I know this one's obviously got the splinters in it. But maybe the next one doesn't need to. Or it could be literally there for us to hold on as part of its saddle. Maybe this is the one that's going to have a whole bunch of different acid attacks, dust attacks and more. And be like a premium kind of mini boss creature that we could tame. I think it's much more viable to have a large creature like this as well. And maybe it could even be a 2 saddle creature. But if we did have this one, then people probably still would ask for the small one. So you know what though, I'm going to keep it. So yeah, obviously with the spiders, if I'm saying we've got a wolf spider going with our orb weaver, then there should be again no reason why these can't be mounts. That said, the infected one, probably not, given its explosive nature. And we don't know obviously these guys are actually returning. Likewise for the black widows. It might seem obvious that they might. They definitely would be cool, but maybe a bit too OP. Just think of the speed of their attacks. How would that translate so well? With the venom as well, it might be really tough to balance this. Like even with the wolf spider, I feel like I'm pushing the limits of maybe having an OP kind of tame. Of course, what I do like about the Black Widow though is the ability to maybe summon some little Black Widow spiderlings. And don't forget we have got tarantulas in the game, so maybe they'll bypass Black Widows altogether. Maybe a tarantula will be slightly slower moving than these guys. I do believe they don't actually scuttle around as fast. They might be just as strong as deadly, but I think there's got to be some sort of nerf to a Black Widow if it was ever to be a mount. So I'm actually going to discount it. And I'm discounting you for pretty much the same reasons. Too OP, too many abilities, and probably too many spiders. And yes, obviously boss ones like the Infected or the regular Brood, I think would simply just be way, way over the top. And shout out to Rosso for this one of my rat bags. Diving Bell Spider, I think is a great idea. Although looking at it, it is relatively small. We'd have to resize these guys up a bit. Rosso's idea was to treat these like a submarine. Diving through the water, obviously, giving you the ability to breathe under the water. I do love that idea. If they can size these guys up a little bit, it could be like one big underwater mount for now. That'd be cool to utilise it and attack other creatures with it. But until we can get a Diving Bell Spider, I actually like the idea of having a water boatman. Now hear me out, you don't actually sit on top of it. Instead, you use it like one of them little kind of fans that drives you through the water. I don't know what they're actually called. You see like professional divers using them. I think Rust just added one to their game. Imagine if you could literally just grab onto the sides here, or you laid on it like a boogie board. Obviously not every saddle has to be having you sitting upright. And thinking about that, there's an argument that says you could have a saddle that drops underneath certain bugs and you just sit like a little swing underneath it. But yeah, this could be like the tier 1 water mount that we can get to move around. It would obviously go really fast, maybe give us more oxygen, although I wouldn't want to sit infinite. And then we move on to the Diving Bell Spider eventually. So I'm putting these in the keep. Of course, it may be a while before we see any kind of water creatures. There's no confirmation that the pond is actually going to be there for early access launch. We know there's lots of water, but it doesn't mean it's actually going to be filled with stuff. They may still be developing what creatures go in it. I don't know anyone that actually likes antlions. They're kind of annoying. And oh my god, I never realised how ugly they are. Only a mother could love these guys. But as a tame, could they be good? Maybe. If only to show off the scorpion skills. Let's face it, riding a scorpion would be badass. But again, it feels like it would probably be a bit too OP. We'd have to design a way that you could use a scorpion's attack with its tail so that you wouldn't actually get hurt while sitting on it. So maybe that can be achieved. Maybe there can be a different variant of the scorpions. Like we'll only have access to like a baby scorpion or whatever. But the burrowing that a scorpion does is obviously pretty similar to the antlion. And how cool would that be? In certain environments, if you could actually dive under and you will just see like a little icon or just the ground moving, and it turns out it's you actually riding on your antlion. But the antlions are so specific to certain types of biome, literally only find them in the sandbox. We could potentially have like a coastline sort of deal at the pond because it's going to be a large body of water. So maybe this is where these guys might live a bit more. Or maybe there will be another kind of sandbox. I think their attacking abilities aren't too OP either. So for specific getting around, if they were to add some sort of desert environment or there's a large coast environment, these would be great, but only if we can burrow underground. And I've got a feeling they probably don't want players actually being able to do that. Could open up a whole host of issues and problems in trying to navigate around the map. So maybe, but I'm going to say no. And for that same reason, I think maybe ladybird larvae or any kind of larvae would actually be maybe not such a good mount. Interesting maybe again, but only if they can go under the ground and burrow. These guys are pretty fast though. It feels like these guys should actually be faster than the ant soldiers, but they are a little bit smaller as well. But they do feel kind of awkward if we were sitting on them like a saddle, as the saddle would feel maybe a bit too wide. They just don't have enough long parts or thin parts for us to really feel like we're riding a bike or something, because that's what I'm really treating the actual soldier ants as. So maybe a fun idea. Again, it would all just depend on whether or not they're going to implement any mechanics to burrow under the ground. But in terms of attacks and abilities, it feels like larvae are pretty weak. And yes, of course, while I'm here, maybe more soldier ants as mounts. Again, if you're going to have the regular, then there's no real reason why you shouldn't really have another one of these guys. Now, fire ants, it does look like they may be in the game. There's some special fire samurai armor. Pictures of it got taken down from some sites. It just makes sense that you'd be able to get like an upgraded version of this guy. Obviously more powerful, more formidable. And again, could be down the route of actually chomping through different routes. It does keep things relatively simple without everyone asking for every bug. There could be reasons why only ants and kind of spiders will be the mounts for a while. And yeah, it might still feel like just reskinning and not much effort into mounts. But it'd still be cool to have a bit of a selection. We haven't seen any evidence yet of black mounts. We haven't seen any evidence yet of any black ants in the game. But if they were, then that you'd assume they'd be more defensive and bulkier. Could take more hits. And yeah, it would simply be a 1, 2, 3 kind of deal. These guys are gatherers, getting through tier 1 things like roots. Tier 2 roots, gatherers, but even better and more tankier. And tier 3, maybe not so much about gathering, maybe a little bit faster, a little bit more dangerous. So I guess we'll keep them in the action. So we are going to keep them for sure. I don't think it's really even worth contemplating some of the smaller creatures. They are just simply way too small. The only thing it could be interesting was, what if you had a sled and you had like a team of ants that could pull you along? That would be a nightmare to program and animate. But that would be the only way I could see having a bunch of smaller creatures. Although for sure there is an argument, what if we had sort of farmyard creatures? Like we've got pets obviously, like aphids, weevils and smaller ants. So we're presuming that they're still going to be a thing. But what if there were some smaller creatures or just other creatures that we could actually get resources from? Like spiders producing web, aphids actually producing lots and lots of nectar, or maybe there's a silkworm in game that gives us silk. Basically farmyard bugs to keep, not necessary to always go out and explore and fight with. Now one thing to think about is mantises. Well, obviously we've got the orchid boss, but we're getting the green mantises inside. These would be sick as a mount for sure. Being able to jump and hop around. Obviously grasshopper is the one that most people are going to reference, and it would be cool. We've seen that in games like Smallland, but this is like the ultimate sort of tier 3 kind of creature for the green mantises. I could see that happening, but it does still rely on making them not so OP. If the green mantis doesn't have all of the same attacks as this one, like the ground pound, and just has maybe like the pounce and just regular claw attacks, then yeah, I can't see any reason why we wouldn't have it as a mount. So not the orchid mant itself, but just a regular mantis. I think that's totally viable as a creature we could have. So that's pretty much it for the actual land creatures. There's absolutely more, I'm sure, that'd be amazing inside the game. Things like I said, the grasshopper. maybe some different types of beetles. But now we move on to pretty much maybe the most contentious or going to be talked about mounts, flyers. The first thing is bees. Everyone and their mum is going to ask for them. I've always wanted them. I show off my thumbnails that I got commissioned literally 5 years ago nearly now, highlighting that I thought it would be so cool if we could literally tame or fly or ride on these guys. When you actually look at a bee though, and you look at their wings, they're pretty high up, right? Like, where is the saddle going? Could they put a saddle maybe on the backside? But then how does that work with its attacks and stuff? So while I do want a bee, when you look at the pure mechanics of it, it doesn't really feel like it's actually a suitable creature to ride on. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe there is a way to go ahead and put a saddle right on top of its head, just on the neck there. So I'm going to include it for sure in something I want to see. But I am a bit concerned about, the mechanics of it. And for the same reason, you've got to look at other creatures like the wasps. Again, depending where their wings are, they're kind of really close to their head. There's not much space there for a saddle. And if you're putting saddles on the back of them, then you're kind of nullifying their attacks. And also, you'd be riding around, and this is literally what you'd be seeing all the time. Get annoying if you kept seeing all of the actual wings moving around in front of you. I think the bees do have maybe more of a shot. It has got a larger and slightly longer area between the wings and its skull, its head. So I'm going to get rid of wasps. And we'll keep bees, even though I still kind of feel like it'd be tough to implement. Fireflies, yeah, pretty tough to actually add. What could be cool though is if you could use them like gliders. A bit like the actual water boatman. What if you were able to literally grab onto its legs or it picked you up? That's another way we could incorporate mounts. The creature picks you up and you guide and direct it using maybe strings, a bit like a wing glider. But I think Grounded will probably implement stuff like gliders into the game this time. So although it would be cool to have these guys for sure, I think it'd be a lot of work getting these guys to kind of literally grab you and then fly around. But not out of the realms of possibility. You could argue that could be the way we could get different types of flyers that have their wings too close to the front of their head. But yeah, I don't know. It's actually grown on me, the idea that this guy could pick you up and you'd be able to glide at least, or maybe fly for a very limited time. Especially the fact you could use it at night to kind of highlight and show places in the dark. So now I've hit on that idea, you know what? I'm keeping it. And does that work then with mosquitoes? I feel like mosquitoes are even punier. It's definitely got some attack capabilities as well, which we'll probably need more of. It only just bugs me though, the animation that would take place with these guys maybe just being on the floor, just sitting there, suddenly then jumping up in the air and us grabbing them underneath their legs. The only other thing I've got against maybe mosquitoes and actually wasps, even if we do take on board that idea that they'll just pick you up and fly around, they're not like the best, friendliest creatures, are they? Like, you never have any kind of friendly connotation with a wasp. You see one, it comes towards you, you think, oh no, they're going to sting me. Compared to maybe a bee, which you understand a bit more, and they're not actually as homicidal. And same thing goes with mosquitoes. In terms of actual game sense, I don't think these work. You could argue, well, an all-weaver spider? Surely not. But yeah, these guys generally don't go out their way to go and bite anyone. And that's why spiders can work. It's also maybe a reason why it wouldn't maybe work for the Black Widow, since they're maybe a bit more violent. And I'm sure there's going to be some real nerds out there going, actually, and that could be something that goes against having a wolf spider as another one. Maybe it's just deemed a little bit too aggressive. So yeah, as much as it would be cool, I'm going to get rid of these as well. Of course, butterflies, absolutely, I think could be something interesting. But they do, again, still feel just a little bit too delicate to have as a mount. And again, it would only work if they was going to maybe pick you up and carry you in their legs or arms. But I don't know, I still feel like it's a bit too floaty. At least with the actual firefly, it seems to have better flight paths, more stable. Butterflies are just a bit flittery. But they're definitely friendly, they're definitely cute enough to have that we could potentially tame as one. But I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of it. Also got to think about flyers making the game too easy. It's something I've highlighted a lot in the past. In games like Ark, once you get a flyer, the game becomes 10 times easier in terms of not getting jumped on. Anytime there's danger, get on your creature, fly high, and you're pretty much safe. You also miss out a lot on exploring the map once you get a flyer. It can really curtail some of the exploration. So any flyers have to be pretty balanced, and that's always a hard thing, as Small Land found out. At the beginning they were pretty sucky because they had so much less stamina to use to fly around. And we're presuming any creatures like these, flyers wise, will obviously rely on stamina to fly too. But having at least a bee may be something that can help us fight in the air, and possibly a firefly for like the earlier version of a flight creature I think could work. And this is obviously always just my own logic. It might not actually be logical. You guys let me know. And I think that's pretty much it. Like I said, there's so many other creatures, but they're all basically variations of ones we've talked about or just way too small. But already looking, just imagine if this was kind of the selection of mounts we could have in Grounded 2. I actually think that's pretty cool. Different tiers and varieties of the actual ants. If we actually move some of these guys over as well to really give it the final look and probably for the thumbnail, I feel like we've got a good balance here. None of these creatures are too OP, bar maybe the Mantis and the wolf spider. We've got a selection of water creatures that we could potentially use, a couple of flyers that maybe not too OP, and different tiers and more powerful creatures for sure, but yeah, just balancing it so it's not too OP. And yeah, there's some bugs I've not really spoken about that are new, things like the caterpillar. I mean, it's a pretty spiky boy. I'm not too sure how I would ever be able to sit on one of them. Maybe a side saddle for like all four, but it'd be pretty slow, right? The scorpion, I think, could potentially be there if we've got like a young scorpion for sure. But it does have the same problem with its tail basically overhanging you whenever you're riding it. Unless we're about to rehabilitate cockroaches, I don't really want these as a mount. But it really would subvert maybe people's expectations, but you can see the shells and the wings on this guy actually opening up, although not on that main top part, so there is still maybe that tiny bit of potential. But what would they offer? Like just a big tanky creature to utilise? Maybe a snail can produce the brand new tough gunk that we're going to use to craft, but other than that I can't see it more than just a farm animal. If you feel I've been a bit too conservative, let me know out of the creatures that I've basically said no to, what you'd like to see added. I'd love to see so many of these added as mounts, especially the Black Ox Beetle, thinking about it with its charge attack and stuff. But yeah, this is what I think we could expect, stuff like this in the next year and a half, 2 years maybe. I can't wait to see when I'm wrong and they introduce a whole bunch of different bugs. As always though, I'll let you guys know, and of course the minute we find out any more concrete details, I'll let you guys know. But do put in the comment section what bugs you want to see added to Grounded.